superintendent, and I am thrilled to be working with the team at Brisk to bring this incredible tool to educators and their students everywhere. So good morning, Danielle. Thanks for joining me for part two.
Yeah, I'm so excited to be here. Good morning, everybody. I'm Danielle Bosneac. So I'm the former CAO of the Pewaukee School District, which is a suburb of Milwaukee, Wisconsin, of about 3,000 students. Currently, I'm the Director of Professional Development for one of our education state associations here in Wisconsin, and I also run my own consulting firm doing education leadership trainings and curriculum building for school districts. So I'm really excited to chat about the journey that Pewaukee went on with Brisk and just in general about the power of AI tools in education.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And for our attendees, would you please introduce yourselves in the chat? One of the things that we would love to do is know who's here for the conversation today and for you all to know each other and where you're located. Maybe there are folks from the same state or nearby towns, and you can support each other on this journey. So Mark has sent an AI assistant to take notes on the meeting. Welcome. Hi, Tamara. North Carolina. Hope you all are okay from the hurricane. Welcome. We have some folks from Florida. Also hope you're okay from the hurricane. Colorado, Southern California, Fresno. Fantastic. Thank you so much. We want to really encourage you to put your questions in the chat. There'll be a time for Q&A. As I said, there'll be a time for you to share what you're up to in your districts. Thanks so much for letting us know who's on the call today. So, quick, very brief overview of Brisk and Boost. Brisk Teaching is, of course, all of our new favorite Google Chrome extension. Brisk, one of the things that makes it so incredibly powerful is that it works right on top of the tools that you use every day. We know that it is very easy to download Brisk. You just go to briskteaching.com and click the add to Chrome for free. Make sure that when you are sharing this process with folks, that you make sure that they remember to pin the extension on their toolbar, because that is a common point of confusion. Once you have it, it shows up everywhere you need it, in Google Docs, on YouTube videos, on any slide deck, on articles, websites, PDFs, in student writing. With student writing, as a former English teacher, this feature of being able to give immediate high-quality feedback to students on their writing is extraordinary. We also have the ability to inspect student writing. It gives a playback of the student's entire writing process. We also, with Brisk, have the ability to create unlimited materials, presentations, quizzes, resources, lesson plans, escape rooms. I mean, we really are only limited by our imagination. It's extraordinary. We can also translate and level text to match students' reading levels and translate into any language. We have the ability now with Boost, our newest feature to launch, to be able to give students a safe, interactive way to experience AI and to boost their own learning through the boosted students' activities. If you look at the tutor feature, there is the ability to have a character chat. I created a story of a butterfly's life journey and through the life cycle of a butterfly, and boosted it to students to chat with the butterfly. There are so many extraordinary things that you can do. and introduce students to the use of AI and accelerate their learning. So I said it would be a brief tour of Brisk and Boost. That's the overview. If you are new to Brisk and Boost, we hope that you will be in touch and let us know how we can support your journey. One of the things that I always want to remind educators of is that the 80-20 rule. AI will get us 80% of the way to completing a task, but that human intelligence, that HI, is so crucial for the 20%. It's so important that educators' expertise, that teachers remain in the loop with student learning. And so with that, we will dive into the meat of this conversation, which is the 10 steps in the AI Implementation Toolkit. And Danielle, in the last webinar, you went through your journey with implementing Brisk in Pewaukee. And for those folks who weren't able to join us last time, could you just give a brief overview of the process that you all used?
Yeah, so we dove into just the use of AI and exploring it really early on when it really kind of hit the general market, so to speak, right after the new year of 2023. And we took a team and really started to dive in and learn right away. And so by April of 2023, we had developed a vision for AI use in our school system. And then really kind of spent the summer doing some strategic planning. We developed guidelines, ethics guidelines, and acceptable use policies. Well, we didn't develop an acceptable use policy. We actually already had one that totally fit, but we reviewed those. We also set up some strategic goals for what we wanted to do in the first year with AI, which was really help our adults in our system, first and foremost, learn how to use it as efficiently as possible to benefit their own work, knowing that that would get buy-in, and that as the tools developed and kind of societal understanding of it developed, we would get to a place where then student use of AI tools would make sense as well, but really kind of focused on the adults out of the gate. And then we went to try to find tools that fit our lens, which was primarily, first and foremost, ease of use. We wanted to promote AI resources that were going to help our staff really efficiently do their jobs better. And so we came across Brisk, and it's to date still the only tool that we have formally endorsed as a school district. Our teachers have free reign to use whatever resources they want to use from an AI resource standpoint, but we actually did intentional professional development with Brisk and continue to promote that because of its ease of use for our staff, being built right into Google, which we were a Google system. And so from that point on, we've really been working on professional development and helping our teachers think about all of the different ways that Brisk and AI in general can support teaching and learning and support students now, certainly now as we start to enter into more student use.
Yeah, fantastic. The very start of your journey, as you shared it with me in preparation for this webinar, was related to your strategic planning and strategic goals of what you wanted to do and accomplish. And repeatedly, you talked about the fact that AI was not separate and apart from your typical strategic planning process, but a part of it. So can you talk a little bit about how you set those strategic goals?
Yeah, I mean, right when AI hit the market, it felt like it was going to be this not extra thing, but it was going to be another thing in our world in education. that was going to be disruptive, and it was going to be disruptive in a positive way, I always felt. And it is a big thing, and it is disruptive in a positive way. But then when we really got down to the brass tacks of looking at policy and looking at goal setting and looking at vision setting, we realized that AI fits in with so much of what we already view from a technology instruction standpoint. So when we went to, develop our vision, which you can see here on the slide deck, AI was the topic at the forefront, but really this vision was the same vision that we have for students when it comes to any technology use. We want them to understand the digital citizenship behind it, the ethical use behind it, appropriate use behind it. But we also want it to be used to benefit students and staff. And so as we set those goals, we quickly realized these were already right in alignment with what we already were hoping students, have when we went to one-to-one laptops, or when, we gave access to different other technologies. So it fell right in line. So I think people have been held up at times about policy and goal setting, feeling like it's this big thing to undertake, when in reality, it probably aligns with a lot of what's already happening in our systems.
Yeah, I love this goal for the use of AI. I'm just going to read it out loud. To provide students with the future-ready skills that will empower them to use technology and information while understanding digital citizenship and ethical use of AI, and being able to integrate that into your goals and hopes for all of your students.
Mhm.
Also, you had a goal around teachers and really wanting to lighten their workload while making innovation and engagement easier. And so keeping an eye on both of those goals in the process. You also shared with me an extensive process of engaging stakeholders in this journey, bringing them along the path and meeting them wherever they were on their AI journey. And so what did that look like?
Yeah, so this is one that's really important to understand your community and understand where your stakeholders are at and what needs to happen. And so, what you see here is a variety of different ideas for how to engage stakeholders. We did some of these, not all of these. I would say some of the most important features is really starting to quickly understand what is your staff's comfort level with AI tools. So we did survey our staff. We set a strategic goal then based on their comfort level and their use of AI, so that within a year, we were able to then see, did that increase, did that improve? We also held a board learning session to make sure that our board understood what it was that we were doing and what we weren't doing as well, right? At the time, right, that we were a very early adopter of AI, student use, and particularly terms of service around student use, was not yet there. Obviously, we've seen with Boost and other things that is coming as we expected. But we needed to let our board know that, first and foremost, we were using this with our staff to help them. And then, hearing from our students as well, what was their understanding, and, what do they see as its own utility and stuff. So I have the benefit of having 2 high school boys in my own house, so that were in our system. So I had some easy access to student voice on a pretty regular basis.
Right at the dinner table.
Right.
Fantastic. Now, just as you talked about strategic goals and working that into your strategic planning process, you talked about updating policies but really within your existing policies, reviewing those and updating them as needed. What did you find when you went to update your policies?
Yeah, so, the first thing that we found is when we looked at 2 primary policies, our technology acceptable use policy and our academic dishonesty or academic integrity policy, that we were good, that we were covered, that technology acceptable use really covered the use of AI tools as well. So we were fine there. And that academic dishonesty, that led to a great conversation, which is like a whole other webinar. I know we touched on it briefly in the last one around, is AI use, academic dishonesty or not? And I firmly believe it is not, but that, there's still some things you should be checking along the way on that. That we were really good to go with that. But the one thing that we did develop are some ethics guidelines, so that staff and students understood the most appropriate ways to be using AI tools. So you see a QR code there on the slide deck. And I know that I saw in the chat, we're going to be sharing the slide deck with folks. So, and this is also on the Brisk website, is that Pewaukee developed those ethics guidelines and really an entire staff and student guidance for the use of AI, including how to cite AI. And so that's all linked there, both in that QR code and it's on the Brisk website as well. So if anybody's interested in those materials.
Danielle, you all are so generously sharing your learnings so that we can all get smarter faster. I did drop the link to the Pewaukee story and those downloadable resources into the chat.
Awesome.
So then you explored options and you were able to go through a process of exploration to see what tools were out there. Tell me about that process.
Yeah, so, myself and our chief information officer, she, her and I really kind of started to explore a handful of tools. And then as we came across things and as others in our systems came across things, we started to share like what's working, what's not working, what are the successes, what seem to be the challenges, always keeping in mind, and I know we'll talk about it here a little bit, is like, what is some criteria for like, how do you select particular tools? And so it was really about figuring out what was going to be successful about these and what were going to be the challenges. But we also, for us, we did a small pilot of different resources, not just Brisk, there were some others as well. And, we would have usually about, 3 to 5 teachers explore a tool for an intentional period of time, and really try to dig into it and find out, is this going well or not going well? And then we really identified what did we want to move forward with and what kind of professional development we wanted to have because of that.
Yeah, you have talked a lot with the Brisk team about that selection criteria and why it is that you, through your evaluation process, you selected Brisk. Can you talk about why you prioritized these pieces for your evaluation criteria?
Yeah, so you see our criteria there. Essentially, those were our categories that we used. And so first and foremost, I've already said it, I feel like a few times, but ease of use, something that was for us built into Google was hugely helpful. But also, what did the tool provide that was really relevant to making our teachers' lives better? So, for Brisk, it was the adjustment of reading levels and the feedback tool right out of the gate were most helpful, and the language translation. We're a community that serves a lot of students from the country of India, which has dialects that aren't common for an EL teacher to be able to support necessarily. And so, it has been hard at times for our teachers to support students with different languages. And so Brisk, instantly made that easier for them. And so that was really, really happy, and a great piece to it. But I will say, Michelle, you and I have talked about this before. For me, as a district level person, the customer service from Brisk is really what blew us out of the water. I text with the CEO of Brisk on a regular basis. I don't know who has that kind of like access to Teams, but every time in the first few months that we were using Brisk, and again, we were a really early adopter. And so it was so much still in beta. And so we would say, hey, what about this? What about this? And then all of a sudden, 2 days later, it would be there. And it was amazing. And it was such a responsive team, such a kind team to work with. I said it in our last webinar, I'm super picky. In my entire 20-year career as an administrator, as a teacher, I have only ever endorsed 2 companies, Brisk being one of them, that I actually will go out and share our use and our story with them. I tend to be the one that is, easily, not picking up the phone when when that vendor calls, or ignoring the email. But for Brisk, it was their customer service that really was fantastic.
Outstanding. Glad to hear it. And the custom professional development that is provided is exceptional. Sometimes when you are working on a professional development plan, there are teachers who are tech reluctant or resistant. Can you tell us about a moment when you saw somebody who may not have been comfortable with AI or moving forward with it, when you saw them embrace Brisk?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of different stories that come to mind. I think a fairly early one was a special education teacher. Special education teachers, I think, are some of our busiest staff members, right? They have so much paperwork and legal compliance on top of everything else that our teachers are asked to do. And we had a special education teacher who just decided, sort of on a whim, I think out of probably exhaustion, to give Brisk a try, writing IEP goals, and was just blown away by it. And so, kind of an unexpected person to maybe be an advocate for us, and quickly brought along the entire special education team to say, there are so many efficiencies you can find. Again, go back to that 80-20 rule, right? Like, you don't just roll it out without that teacher review and input. But to see particularly our special education staff be able to take a breath was really, really great to see.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's so important that folks be able to experience it themselves, both the efficiencies and then also the increase of student engagement that's possible with these tools. Talk to us a little bit about your professional development plan for rolling this out.
Yeah, so we, tapped the shoulders of a few key teachers that we thought, one, would have an interest in this, as they had always been kind of early tech adopters, but also we thought might be really impacted by this work. So, that was high school English teachers, some social studies teachers, certainly our learning coaches. We ended up creating, and then we also asked staff, like, hey, who's interested in just being a part of a professional development team around AI? And we had a number of volunteers, actually. And so, some people were volunteered, a few people maybe were voluntold, as far as us saying, hey, we really think this would be a great fit for you. But it was that team then that really developed a whole series of professional development experiences for the rest of our staff to engage with and think about. They were also then, right, those peers in the classroom side by side with other teachers, exploring and learning. And people then knew, like, hey, this is the group of people I can go to and ask my question to. No question's a bad question, except for the one that you don't ask. And so people knew who those kind of leaders were in each of our schools. And so we actually have a defined professional development plan, as far as that we have 5 days during the year. They have 16 hours during the summer. They have to do professional development. So people chose to be a part of this AI, really emerging technologies pathway. And then they followed that pathway and that PD, led by, again, that group of teachers throughout the entire year. And then at moments, we identified where was it necessary to talk to the whole staff about things, right? That as terms of service were changing, it was important to talk to the whole staff, keeping them informed of, like, the different changes and what's happening. When Brisk made major updates, right, to things. And we had, it had been a little while. We made sure we went back in front of whole staff and say, hey, if you haven't really dived into Brisk yet, here's some new things that maybe you should be, noticing, and that might help you out. So,
Yeah,
it's a little bit of both that one-on-one as well as that whole group.
As new features are released, have you checked this out? Have you thought about how to use it to improve student learning? I think that that's a really powerful model to have these local experts who can support and share with their peers what is working. Home communication. This is another stakeholder group that that we need to communicate with. What did that look like in Pewaukee?
Yeah, so our communication with our parents was pretty straightforward in that we sent a letter sort of at the start of last school year mentioning that, like, we were exploring it. Sort of our position was to help our staff with efficiencies, that terms of use hadn't really allowed students yet to access it, but that we would be teaching them around the ethical use of it. But one of the things that a lot of districts are doing that I think is really great is, having parent nights, night for families. And the focus of those oftentimes has been, how can AI have efficiencies for the adults, right? So that, yes, you're coming to learn a little bit about what the school is doing with students and with their own staff, but you're also learning that about, like, how you can just use these AI tools for your own benefit as an adult, right? I was just showing my husband how he can write a letter of recommendation using Brisk. Because, he's an engineer and he had to do that for an employee, and how he can, update, his own, reports and paperwork. So finding those things helps the adults get the buy-in, and then it's a little less scary knowing that their students are using it.
Yeah, such a good point. Similar to talking to educators about how to use their own efficiencies in that adoption process.
Yep.
One of the things that I'm hearing from families more and more is that AI literacy is so important, both for the families and for their students. They understand that students are able to use AI for solving more complex problems now, and that in the future, the world of work is changing, and they want their students to have the skills and the abilities to function in that world. And so that's important to get those foundations in school.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's Sydney Palmer, who that tech consultant out of California that made the comment that, right, like, AI isn't going to take your job. Somebody who knows how to use AI will. Right. And I think, right, our students, that they're going to be that generation. They're going to be the generation that knows how to utilize AI tools to be far more efficient and productive. And so, they're going to enter that world. And so we need to both prepare them, and we need to help the adults then understand how this is changing the landscape as well.
Yes, 100%. So let's move into AI literacy for students, because that's, of course, a crucial part of this as well, in the implementation of AI in your schools, in your school district. How did that go in Pewaukee?
Yeah, so, one of the first things you have to do when it comes to thinking about teaching students about how to use AI, not just the actual technical skill of prompting and things like that, but the actual, thinking more around the ethical use and acceptable use of AI, is, determining what is the right age to start that conversation in. We know that it's getting younger and younger, but we also know that, probably late elementary, middle school is going to be where students independently are far more often using AI tools. But again, I think kids are being, AI is surrounding everybody in our world now. So really figuring out when is it best to teach the students is step kind of one to all of this, but then also looking at what resources there are to support lessons, so we use Neptune Navigate. Common Sense Media, I know, there's quite a few that have pretty good resources out there that don't require our teachers to develop all of the lessons. Of course, if our teachers want to develop lessons, they can use Brisk to help them with that, about how to teach AI at different ages. For us, we actually had our myself and our chief information officer, we went and delivered a lot of the lessons. We just took that off our teachers' plates and said, hey, we're going to do it for you. You let us know when you want us to come in. We'll come in and we'll deliver those lessons. So our teachers didn't have to worry about it at all. As we continue to move on, and it needs to become a part of the everyday curriculum. And so it's going to have to be a part of that digital citizenship conversation we have at various grade levels. But that's, really a mapping project that needs to be done.
Yeah, very, very thoughtful, thorough way to roll it out, and in a way that really supported teachers to be able to teach a new piece of content, some of which they're just learning. We are going to be sharing out the slide deck, an AI implementation toolkit with key questions and action items for you all at the close of this meeting and in a follow-up email. So thank you for the questions in the chat. Step 9, we are almost there. Step 9 and 10. You spent some time evaluating the impact of AI on teaching and learning. And I'm wondering if you can just share a memorable piece of feedback that you got from teachers in the process.
Yeah, I think when AI came to be, the impact on the writing process was pretty much the immediate both fear and intrigue by most educators, right? And high school English teachers, I think, were out of the gate the first ones to go, what does this mean, right? And how's my world going to change? And so, when our high school English department in particular saw the feedback feature of Brisk and realized that they always struggled. And I was a high school social studies teacher. I knew what it was like to grade 130 essays. And, it's just a slog. And no matter how good of a teacher you are, it is hard to give good quality feedback consistently to students. And so our English team, pretty quickly recognized that Brisk allows them to give both timely feedback as well as quality feedback. It was easy to obviously edit and manipulate as they needed to, but they could really give feedback to continue the writing process versus actually having AI disrupt the writing process, which is sort of where their brains immediately went. And so to see that department in particular embrace it so quickly and realize that, yeah, it's going to change how they teach. Yeah, the editing process is now becoming, on a much more even playing field than the writing process, which, we all know that, we spend a lot of time teaching kids how to write, a little bit amount of time teaching them how to edit. But there's so much critical thinking and creativity that happens during the editing process. That's really shifting, but that's actually exciting for them and not scary for them. I mean, so just to see excitement from a high school English teacher is hands down.
I was also a middle school and high school English and social studies teacher. And if I had 180 students, if I needed to give feedback on papers, it was my evenings and weekends. And so this idea that teachers can be reclaiming that time to give them time for those crucial interactions that they need to have with students. Right. And so other things that you were part of your evaluation, what did you all use as tools for evaluation?
Yeah, I mentioned earlier that we used some survey tools, right, to understand teacher use, to understand their comfort level, to start to understand student use as well, as we piloted Boost last spring. We obviously took qualitative data in as well. We have a number of testimonials, almost all of them not asked for, right? I mean, there are, well, I can't really come up with any other than AI use. of when teachers just randomly sent me an email sharing their wins with me in the classroom. You know, as a chief academic officer, you don't always get people being like, I love that you did this and helped us with this, right? Sometimes you get the opposite. It's okay. But
Unsolicited positive.
unsolicited
Yeah,
positive testimonials is just absolutely amazing, right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
the other big thing that we use to evaluate the impact was Brisk data. If you are a district that uses and have a district account with Brisk, you get monthly data reports that talk to you not only about how many uses of Brisk you had, but what kinds. Like, how are your teachers using Brisk? Is it for the feedback? Is it for the translation? Is it for writing lesson plans? It's all broken down, and by teacher as well. So you get a ton of data that
Mhm.
tells you who are your lead teachers. There were a couple of times that we were like, we didn't realize that teacher was using it as much. Then we got to go to that teacher and say, tell us more. And so that was hugely helpful along the way.
Yeah, and in addition to that, we're now adding boost data about students
Awesome.
and their progress towards learning objectives. So
Awesome.
there is some rich data there. And finally, step 10, the last step before we open up for questions. You have an emerging technologies team that is ongoing. What is that process?
Yeah, so I kind of mentioned it earlier with the professional development. And so it is these teachers that and learning coaches and administrators who really want to be the guides for this and continue to explore anything that's coming out, not just AI. We have some folks on that team that are interested in virtual reality and a few other emerging technologies. But they're really the ones devising the professional development, delivering the professional development, and continuing to help us, help Pewaukee explore what's going on. Right. I think always a sign of any successful program is when the leader can leave and it continues to go. I still stay in contact. I left in August, but I stay in contact with the team on a really regular basis. And I know that they are continuing to find new ways and continuing to move forward with all of this. And there hasn't been one beat missed from my departure, which I think is a testament to that team, and that this is just really work of many people helping to guide and lead.
Yeah, it creates that sustainability, and that through the whole process, you built internal capacity to
Mhm.
continue supporting the growth and the learning. Um, and so we have shared the Pewaukee downloadable resources, and we would love to hear some of your questions. So if you want to put them in the chat or you want to come off of mute and ask your questions, we would love to hear what's on your minds.
Hi, my name is Tony Ramos, and I'm at California Virtual Academies. I actually have several questions. We just did our PD yesterday about Brisk, and we had a few questions come up in our chat. I wanted to confirm a couple things. So, can world language teachers use Brisk to give feedback on an assignment? Is that something that can happen? And then the other question I had is, if a student submits a Google Doc, do we need to have editing access to be able to leave feedback on it, or just view access? So those were the first two questions that I had.
So as far as world language teachers, you can choose the language that you are working in. And if a teacher chooses that language, so we have teachers all around the world who are using Brisk in multiple languages, then you would be able to use, if a student is writing a essay in Spanish, to be able to give feedback. The other question is about access to to give students feedback, just as you would have in a Google Doc. The students should have it set to at least comment access.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for those questions, and know that we are here to support you on the journey.
Great, thank you.
Other questions? I know we had some folks have to drop off to go teach. We really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. I will open up the floor to ask you what is working in your district? What is it that you all are doing that is a promising practice or even a challenge that you would want to share with this group and get some additional consulting?
I'm going to jump in. This is Chad from ABC Unified School District.
Hi,
Can you hear
Chad.
me? Hi,
Yep,
how are you
we
doing?
can.
I think Brisk is great for a number of reasons, but the text leveling tool is, I think, when we talk about what we're trying to do in the classroom to make content accessible to every learner in that room, there's no platform that does a better job with that. And additionally, the feedback tool obviously is fantastic. My concern is that when I look at my usage rates and specifically how it's being used, I'm seeing too many of the teachers in our district, in my opinion, using that inspect writing tool. And I got to find a way in my PD, because I don't emphasize it in the professional development. And maybe it's something that over time organically just gets pushed into the background, but I really would like to see them using the features for accessibility and engagement and not so much focused on trying to catch kids, quote unquote, cheating.
Sure, I really appreciate those observations, and I'll share a few responses, and then Danielle, maybe you want to jump in. First of all, accessibility, comprehensible input, these are so crucial, and so thank you for highlighting the text leveling. In your district, Chad, did you find that one of the biggest challenges or objections around AI was a profound concern teachers had about cheating? And is any use of AI by students considered cheating? Was that an issue?
It's interesting because if we talk about frequency versus like the amplified voice, like there's not a lot of people that are feeling that way, but the ones that are pretty vocal. And these are the ones that are really adverse to using AI at all in the classroom.
Yeah.
Yeah,
what I'm finding is that as teachers shift their instructional methodologies and shift their strategies, the way that they set up assignments determines whether or not use of AI is cheating, right? I find that as teachers get more a greater understanding of their students' voices, that they rely on the inspect writing tool less. And they can trust themselves and their students as they build that culture around appropriate uses of AI and the importance of critical thinking and self-expression, in learning.
right.
And so I would be happy to be a thought partner with you about strategies for that professional learning. And I'll be interested to see if your usage data follows a similar curve.
Yeah, you're speaking my language. So what I'm advocating for is like celebrating that student voice, right? Celebrating growth, not perfection. And then rethinking how your assignments have been done in the past and giving it a new opportunity. And there's no better tool to use to like give it a glow up. Let's take that, use those same objectives, but let's find a different way to do it.
Chad, I have two thoughts as well to add to that. One of the things that I did was, we had some staff using that. It was intriguing when the inspect writing came to be. Pretty early on in one of our PD sessions, we had one of our social studies teachers share how he was using the inspect writing, yes, at first to understand if students were using AI, but then using it as a conferencing tool about really, it was then engaging the student in a conversation about why did you make this decision to, or where did this paste come from? And what he was learning during those conferences, and how that actually helped him really better understand the student thinking. And so changing the mindset about that inspect writing tool as not a gotcha tool, but rather a tool for conferencing with students, that seemed to help a little bit in some of that. And then Michelle, if you want to, I don't know if it's going to work because you're sharing your screen. I did add a slide that we used real quickly. If you just advance one more slide. No, it's not going to unless you unshare and then reshare. But when we share this, when we share the slide deck, there's going to be a slide in there that I have used. We used it in our last webinar around this whole spectrum of cheating versus not cheating. And when you see the spectrum, it's basically right from AI created everything to the student created everything. And where does cheating start to fall in all of that? And what I've always said is replace the word AI with peer. And that is going to help your teachers understand what we're talking about when we're talking about, right? So like, are we okay with a peer reviewing somebody's writing and giving feedback? Well, of course we are. It's been an instructional strategy for like all of time. So why are we not okay with AI giving feedback, or being used as an editing tool? Like it gets a lot harder to defend this whole like any use of AI is cheating thing when you're like, just insert the word peer on this spectrum, and you're going to pretty quickly understand that short of just like in regular school, if Michelle writes the whole thing and I turn it in as my own, yep, that's cheating. So if AI writes it all and I turn it in and claim it as my own and don't cite it and then we have a problem, right? But 95% of the time that is not happening, right?
Yeah. We shared that slide on the last webinar, and I will include it in this one as well. It's very rich. I know that we are going to start losing some folks at we've hit our time here, but Danielle and I can stay on for another few minutes. I want to share with you, I dropped into the chat a feedback form. Your feedback helps me make improvements for the next webinar. I want to let you know that the next webinar is set for November 15th with our guest being Erin Bauman, who is the Assistant Superintendent of Instructional Services at Northville Public Schools in Michigan. And I'm really looking forward to talking about the strategies to boost student engagement with AI. And again, your time is precious, and I want to thank you for sharing it with us, but also thank you for the incredible work you do to educate our youth and to support your communities